Hello, everyone. This is Rick Sauers. I'm the curator at the Western Museum of Mining and Industry here in Colorado Springs. And today I want to talk about the rehabilitation of the 1890s Reynolds Farmhouse. It was built in the 1890s by Joseph and Sarah Reynolds. He was a Pennsylvania Civil War veteran who moved out here after the war. He had worked as a carpenter on the Union Pacific Railroad, the Transcontinental Railroad, and then by the 1880s he was in Denver and then moved down in between Denver and Colorado Springs and bought eventually two 1,000-acre dairy farms. In the 1890s, he and his wife built this fine Victorian farmhouse, which really is the last surviving such farmhouse in El Paso County. He was also a member of the state legislature and made extra money by having a sawmill in addition to the dairy cow's milk that he sold locally. The next couple of slides will show you who the owners of the house have been since the 1890s. The Reynoldses moved to Arkansas in 1901, exchanging their dairy farm here for one in Arkansas, and now we know that the Fulkersons moved here. And then after a couple of other owners, the next significant owner was Lazard Kahn, who owned the house from 1909 to 1930. He was an internationally known mineralogist, a pioneer in the field of micromounting, and in 1927, a new mineral crystal that he had discovered in Franklin Township, New Jersey, and wasn't sure what it was named Kahnite after him by his colleagues. And so that happened while he owned the house. And he eventually moved to Colorado Springs, and then we had some other owners until 1977 when the museum purchased 23 acres, what was left of the original 1,000-acre farm here. And so we only have one historic photograph that we've been able to find about the house, and this was taken in the late 1940s. It shows you the white painted house with the original wooden porches. So by the time the museum bought the house, it was beginning to deteriorate. So in 2007, the museum partnered with the State Historic Fund, got some grant money, and commissioned a historic structure report to figure out how the house could be saved. You can see some of the slides here showing the dilapidated paint in the roof. And so the state historical fund partnered with the museum, and we began a three-phased work project to rehabilitate the house. Notice I said rehabilitate, not restore. We're not changing the house, we're rehabilitating it so it can be saved, and so it's useful to both the public and the museum. We split everything into three phases to make it easier to raise money necessary. The State Historical Fund gets its money from the gambling in Cripple Creek and Black Hawk, and so some of the money that comes in from gambling gets allocated to the State Historic Fund. You write grants proposals, and then you get the money. The state will give you 3/4 of the money. You have to come up with the other 1/4. So phase one revolved around fixing the basement and the foundation. And the basement is only under the kitchen in the house. And once we began excavating around the basement, it was kind of scary at the beginning because I've seen 4,000-year-old walls in Greece and Turkey that were in better shape than the basement wall here, which was beginning to collapse. We actually, in the basement, put up supports just in case anything happened. So what the state and us decided after figuring out how to fix this was reinforcing the outside of the wall with rebar and then using shotcrete, which is liquid concrete that will dry after contact. And so that was used below grade, and then everything filled in, and the basement wall now is very, very, very secure. And the other part of phase one involved digging out around the foundation, making sure everything was good there, pointing it up and fixing it. And on the slide here on the left, you'll see we had an archaeologist on hand just in case they found anything. And of course, we did find some things, including a small Native American scraper that was down in the ground near the house. So once phase 1 was done, we moved on, wrote a second grant for phase 2, which included repairing all the windows so they would work properly, fixing the siding, and putting on a new metal roof. So a company in Canyon City called Older Than Dirt did replace the windows bit by bit and fixed everything, including the rope weights and everything else. The siding was covered by peeling lead-based paint. And so as they scraped the paint, and since this was lead-based paint, the decision was made not to scrape every square inch of the paint because that would have involved a lot more cost than putting an envelope around the house to keep the lead from getting everywhere. So only the loose paint was scraped. And you can see in this slide here, everything that's white at this point is new material to replace rotted boards. And so once that was all done, the house was repainted to its original color, which was white. Almost every wooden farmhouse in America was painted or whitewashed white because that was the simplest and cheapest way to do it. And the roof was also replaced. The metal roof had been dinged up and beaten up and was leaking in certain places, and so that was completely replaced. The chimneys were repointed and fixed and then capped so no birds or bats can get in the house. And once that was done, we moved on to the most complicated and expensive phase, which was phase 3, which rehabbed the house interior, which included new electrical and plumbing service, repair of the plaster walls, repair of the floors, repainting all the rooms, repairing and replacing the storm windows, and fixing all the doors. So I'm not going to go through every room in the house here. We would encourage you eventually, once we open this up to the public, to come and see us. But this will give you some ideas of some of the rooms that we fixed. So one of the rooms was the downstairs bathroom, which had a tub that was removed. And behind the tub on the left-hand side here, you can see some tile that was disintegrating, and that was found to be backed with asbestos. So we had to have a hazmat company come in and take out the asbestos. And you see all the really cool wallpaper in here, 1940s, 1950s wallpaper. So basically the bathroom was gutted, and this is what it looks like now at the beginning of March 2021. It's a handicapped accessible unisex bathroom. On the right side was a chimney that only came down about 4 feet from the top of the wall, and then it was held up by wooden struts. And so that was stabilized and fixed and then recovered. And you'll see some of the kitchen wallpaper here on the left. On the right, you'll see some ductwork. The furnace in the house was removed, all the ductwork taken out, and eventually, by the end of phase 3, we put in baseboard electrical. And you can see here's what the kitchen looks like now. It will eventually become a catering kitchen for rental events in the house. The walls needed a lot of work. A lot of the plaster had been dinged up and beaten up. And so as part of the required work with the state, some samples were taken of the plaster, analyzed for content, and then the company doing the replastering had to do the same mix. And you can see this gentleman here getting ready to infill. And on the right slide, you'll see any loose plaster was removed and replaced. And on the right, you'll see a close-up view of some of the plaster. This was the really good old-fashioned horsehair plaster kind that was difficult to remove. As part of the work, our architect, Bob Swickard, went through each of the rooms, and he painstakingly scraped through as many as 18 layers of paint in some of the rooms to get at the different layers of paint. And so when the house was repainted, almost every room is first generation paint to what the house looked like when it was painted in the 1890s. The rear bedroom upstairs had a really weird yellow kind of paint that we decided we would go with second generation just to make it look better. So in some cases, we had to do a little rehab work. Upstairs, at some point in the distant past, somebody took out 2 closets in the 2 upstairs bedrooms and put in a long, narrow, probably illegal bathroom with a shower. And you can see that on the left-hand slide, that was all taken out. A closet that had been put in the front bedroom that covered the ductwork was taken out. And you can see some of the work being done here. And this is what it looks like now. The closet was replaced, the ductwork was taken out, and we'll talk about the floors in just a little bit. On the left is the rear bedroom. On the right is part of the master bedroom. You can see some of the work, the original colors. The master bedroom was kind of a light gray and white, which is really interesting. And the rear bedroom, the second generation color, a couple different shades of brown. Part of the work involved fixing all the interior doors and the transoms. And if you don't know what a transom is, that's that little glass pane above the door that could be opened and closed to let air pass in. And on the left is one of the doors leading from the front entrance hallway into the parlor. The transom was completely gone and filled in, and you can see that on the left-hand slide. And then there was a new transom added along with some new woodwork, and on the right-hand side you can see what it looks like now. And here's an open transom. You can see above the door. And what's interesting is a lot of the transoms have the original metalwork still there. The transom that's shown here has copyrights or patents from the 1880s from a Chicago company. There are 3 fireplaces in the building, 1 in the master bedroom and 2 facing opposite each other in the parlor and dining room. This is the dining room fireplace. It had to be removed from the wall to reattach. You can see how beat up it was. And then on the right, it's been reattached and the tile work in front of it repaired. The floors had all been painted over, so they all had to be painstakingly scraped. And on the left, you can see the rear bedroom upstairs, the heavy amount of paint being done. On the right, you can see some of the woodwork in the office area being stripped. And what we found out when they stripped everything and refinished the floors, they were in beautiful condition underneath. So how much did this cost? In phase 1, our budget was $156,670. We came in $11,000 under, almost $12,000 under. Phase 2, about the same amount of money. We came in $900 under. Phase 3 budget, as I said, is the most expensive, roughly $276,000. We're going to be about $5,000 over because of unexpected discoveries like finding out that the septic system outside the house was broken and needed to be repaired. But at any rate, by the time we're done with all 3 phases, we came in under budget, which is absolutely wonderful. So what do we do next now that the house has been rehabbed? Well, we're going to furnish the house with selected furniture. We're not going to go for the 1890s or the 1920s. We're going to put in some selected antiques that members and friends are donating just to give a kind of a period feel for the house, especially with the bedrooms upstairs. We're going to install a catering kitchen, so in the future we can rent the building out for weddings, and so the upstairs bedrooms will have a bed, a dresser, a mirror where the bridegroom can go change their clothes. We're going to put in some better landscaping around the building. We will erect a gazebo somewhere on the grounds that can be used for photo ops and for weddings and for whatever else. We're working on an optional tour for museum guests. If they want to learn about farming and ranching in El Paso County, we can give a tour of the Reynolds farmstead, which will include the house, the bunkhouses, one of the barns, and calving shed, and talk about what life was like out in the country in the late 19th, early 20th centuries. And then I've said the house is on the State Register of Historic Properties. Once this is all done, I will begin the nomination paperwork to get it on the National Register of Historic Places, which we think it deserves. So anyway, concludes a really nice brief overview of what we've been doing in a Reynolds house over the last 5 years. And we encourage you, keep watching our website, watch us for events and for open houses, and we want you to come and see what we've done. So thank you for listening, and please contact us if you have any questions. And good night.